Alright, we're live.
Hey everybody, thanks for tuning in, and everybody thank you guys for either staying for this next seminar or showing up for this. So today we have Erik from DNR, and Erik is part of their outreach program, right? So this is kind of, so Erik's here to provide us with some information. So we're going to go through a whole ton of stuff, and then after this actually we're going to have a couple people up here. We're going to have Lenny Root out, we're going to have LJ come back up, and Travis come back up. We're going to kind of wrap up everything that we're talking about, kind of different possibilities, but also kind of maybe throw a little positive light on some other things we can do in the Bay during some of these times. So first off, Erik has a clipboard here, so if anybody is not on the DNR mailing list and would like to be, we're just going to hand this around as well. So we will do that now. So real quick too, before Erik gets started on this is not a public forum. I just want to throw this out there. This is not for comments. Erik does not make the rules. He's not in charge of any of it. And he's not going to pass your message along. We want to get some clarity. There's a lot of stuff being thrown out. You know, a lot of people say a lot of different things. So we want to tell everybody exactly where we are right now and what we can kind of look forward to going down the line. So when we're going to find out about things, all that kind of stuff. So I guess with that, I'll give you Erik.
All right, thanks, Mike. Hey, so as Mike said, I am with Maryland DNR Fisheries. My name is Erik Slukovitz. I'm in the outreach program. We call it the Stakeholder Services and Outreach these days. We do outreach with both recreational and commercial fishermen and just your average weekend boaters and vacation folks and tourists and everything else in the state of Maryland. I'll just mention real quick that today is mostly about rockfish regulations, the spring and the summer and fall regulations. I'm also going to talk a little bit about circle hooks, give people a reminder on circle hooks since we have regulations on circle hooks in Maryland in the Bay. This is our fishing guide, which many of you may have gotten already if you buy your fishing license. At a tackle shop, you'll see this. You can also request copies from DNR. That's one of the reasons that we're passing around the sign-up sheet for emails so that we can give you guys updates. So I'm just going to get into the rockfish. Again, I'll talk about spring and then the summer-fall regulations. Spring regulations have been decided and summer or fall regulations have not been decided. That's one of the reasons I'm here. Again, so this is most of you guys know, this is the state fish of Maryland, the rockfish or the striped bass. And it's the state fish that crosses state lines, which actually makes it even more complicated for management because we don't have just our own state policy and our own state government to work with, but we have to work with an interstate commission that manages striped bass, Atlantic States Marine Fisheries Commission. They work all the way from the state of Maine down to North Carolina. So it's real complicated and we got a lot of moving pieces. These two fish were fish that my son and I caught on our Thanksgiving trip in Long Island last year. These fish migrate up and down the coast. There's a very good chance that the smaller fish that my son Ethan has is a 2015 Chesapeake fish because they're already migrating up and down the coast. 2015 year class, like a 4-year-old fish. And that bigger one is very likely a Chesapeake 2011 year class, which was a big spawn. So these fish are moving up and down the coast across state lines, and that makes it even more complicated. Just where we are right now. Right now in the month of March, everything is pretty much the same as it was last year for the month of March. So technically the Susquehanna Flats are open right now until the end of March. Also the Calvert Cliffs power plant down in Lower Bay, Calvert County is open for catch and release fishing. And there's some folks targeting them up around Baltimore, mouth of the Patapsco. So the spring fishery is open until the end of March. Everything starts changing on April 1st. The fishery will be closed for targeting from April 1st until the end of April. And then what we have announced for the spring is the trophy season will start May 1st, but it's going to be a lot shorter. It's going to be just the May 1 to May 15 trophy season with a 35-inch minimum size and 1 fish per person. Another thing that we have announced is the circle hooks. are still up and running for this year. So we're going to have circle hooks for live bait and chumming, and that's in the summer months. Okay. Just some real quick background how we got here. In particular, during the summer and fall months, we had a lot of discard mortality, meaning a lot of fish that are dying after being caught in some pretty stressful conditions in the summer. We eventually got our size limit from 20 inches down to 19 inches, so people could get their limit a little bit quicker and kind of, move on to other fishing. If they're fishing for meat, you can get your limit a little bit quicker and not catch and release as many fish. We had stakeholders expressing a lot of concern about this, and we've also had a lot of concern from the Atlantic States Marine Fisheries Commission. So what we've done recently is we developed what they call a conservation equivalency, or a CE, which is a set of regulations that can be approved by the Atlantic States Commission, and it was actually recently approved. And that includes the mandatory circle hooks for live bait and chumming. And what we want to do also is have our summer regulations in place by May 16th. And I'm hoping that we can actually have them announced sometime, I'm going to say April right now. I'm hoping that we kind of know where we're going in April. But we have to definitely have them online May 16th, because that's the start of the summer fishing. I'm going to talk about the proposed regulations and how you can comment, the areas in the bay that you can fish, and the size limit change that we're looking at, and then again circle hooks. Let's see. So right now, the bottom line is you can comment on 3 different options online. Option 1 is the kind of what they call the de facto standard recommendation from the Atlantic States Marine Fisheries Commission. Option 2 is what DNR developed for our state. It's called the CE, or the conservation equivalency option. And then option 3 is an option that we added where you can comment and also comment on a summer closure period. We're looking at a closure in either July or August to take some pressure off the fish, so you can comment on that. All right, not for the whole season, but just July and August. So option 1 is 1 fish per person per day, 18-inch minimum size. Eliminate the boat fish for charters. That's the 1 extra fish that the captain and the mate can keep, and also end the season on December 15th. So that's option 1. Option 2 is the DNR CE option, the conservation equivalency. So that's a closure from August 16th to August 31st at the end of the summer, a 19-inch minimum size, the captain and mate, and also no boat fish, no extra fish for the charter boat trips, a pilot program for charter captains where they have to report separately, and then end the season on December 10th. Option 3 is a little bit like option 2, but we just added this, and this is where you can actually comment and pick a closure period based on your preference. It would still be the 19-inch minimum size, 1 fish per person, and you can pick a closure period, but it has to be between July 16th and August 31st. So it can't be before July 16th, and it can't be after Labor Day weekend. Again, and then also we're eliminating boat fish for charters, the pilot program for the charter boat captains, and end the season on December 10th.
And going back to the closure periods, option 2 and 3 are 16-day periods.
16-day closure.
So when they say July 16th to August, they're really talking about 3 windows.
Correct.
So there's 3 16-day windows within there. So it wouldn't be the full stretch, or a mix of it would be 1, 2, or 3.
Correct. Yeah, one 16-day.
And that's one of the big things where again you can comment, get your voice heard online on all of these.
Yeah. So we've added the ability for people to comment on that. So why is the summer closure period being considered? This kind of ties in with the circle hooks that I talked about a couple of years ago at the seminar here. We're just trying to take away summer stress and summer effort on striped bass and have like a release valve. so that they're not being constantly hammered all summer when they're stressed out. So with low oxygen and high temperature. So it's an effort to reduce the dead discards. The water temperatures increase in July, oxygen goes down, fish get more stressed. The temps, they peak in July and they stay warm in August. And the last 10 years, we've had some really poor conditions in July and August, kind of like really hot summers with some low oxygen. So during the closure period, you would not be allowed to target striped bass. So the DNR jargon for targeting is actually you cannot catch, harass, harm, pursue, hunt, shoot, wound, or attempt to catch striped bass or striped bass hybrids. There aren't too many striped bass hybrids still left in the bay, but we stocked a few back in the 80s, but that's still sort of the old language that's still in effect. You can fish for other species. For example, Spanish mackerel were really good in August last year. We have a real steady summer fishery for white perch. We're trying to get people to target blue catfish more heavily since they're an invasive fish. We've had some good action for channel catfish. We're also trying to get people to target snakeheads. So you can target those, but you just have to make an effort to avoid interacting with rockfish. So again, this comes down to what they call officer discretion, meaning that our game wardens or our natural resource police, the NRP, they can make a judgment call in the field. They can choose to kind of just give you a warning, or they can choose to give you a ticket, or they can choose to just give you nothing. It's kind of their judgment call. Like what I would just say is, if you are like fishing for perch in the Severn River and you're into a school of rockfish by accident, you just move to a different area because it just doesn't look good if you're catching multiple rockfish in one location. We've had questions about catfishing with cut bait in the Upper Bay. It's a legit technique to catch blue catfish and channel catfish with cut bait in the Upper Bay. But if you suddenly find yourself in a school of rockfish, pull up the anchor, move to a different spot. We're going to have the same issue possibly with Spanish mackerel. It's possible if you're trolling spoons and you slow down or you make a turn, you're going to catch these little rockfish that are up feeding on the surface. These like 10 to 15 inch fish that are out there all summer, a few slightly larger. If you get into an area where you're just constantly catching one after the other, pick up your trolling lines and try to move to another area. That's the only advice I can give you. Yeah. And there's a lot of judgment calls that are made.
Yeah, and I think anything like this where they're doing judgment calls, like these DNR guys, they're not out there like, man, let me find people catching rockfish. That's not what they're driving around looking to do. Like, that guy caught one rockfish. Like, if they see you doing something suspect, they're probably going to watch you for a little bit of time. So if you're out there chumming for catfish and you're catching catfish, they're probably going to look at you with their binoculars and say, this guy's catching catfish. If you yank one or two rockfish up, they probably still may not. Again, this is their discretion, not mine. Not mine. But it's when you catch 4, 5, 6 in a row, they're going to say, okay, this guy is purposely sitting here to catch rockfish. So I think we kind of all agree that it's probably going to be a little lax, but just based on what you said, just not being arrogantly, like there's breaking schools of rockfish, you're just one after the other. It's like, well, you're purposely doing this.
So, and what I'm going to try to do is do some internal outreach, reach out to our officers. Several officers just came out of the academy, so they're brand new. And what we try to do is reach out to the regional commanders and say, here's some scenarios where folks may get into some rockfish unintentionally, and just relay this out to your guys in the field, especially the newer officers that are right out of the academy. So I'm trying to work on that internally, which will help things.
Yeah, and as Eric gets more information on that, we're obviously going to post on that. And one of the things I lean on is when the circle hook regulations changed, and a lot of it was based on, how many people even know about it, and we knew just from all the customers we have, they were a lot more warnings, a lot more lax on it in the beginning. It was kind of like, hey, we're just going to let people know this is the law. So, I don't think everybody should freak out like, oh gosh, if I go fishing on the bay, I'm going to get a ticket because this is going to happen. I don't think it should be a fear to keep off the bay.
Right. So another thing which is going to be similar to the last several years is we have these area closures. So just keep this in mind. For the trophy season, it's going to be the same as we've done the last several years. The bay is going to be open below Brewerton Channel. That's the green area. The green area is the open area. The red area is are the closed spawning rivers, which are closed still on May 1st because we have a few late spawners. And the yellow areas, which are just show up very light here on this screen, are catch-and-lays, like the Susquehanna Flats. And then on May 16th, that's technically the beginning of the summer season. More of the bay opens up, but we still have some red areas that are still closed for just to be sure that all the last remaining fish can finish spawning and then leave and move back south down the bay or out the C&D Canal. Some of the fish actually migrate through the C&D Canal out to the Delaware Bay, which is pretty interesting. And we're just allowing them to finish all of that activity. And then June 1, as we had last year, June 1 is open. So for the entire bay, all the way up to the Conowingo. So the tidal bay is the whole bay from the Virginia line to the Conowingo. And we have a lot of people that fish for striped bass, rockfish in the Conowingo tail race. They also fish for catfish up there, flathead cats. There's some shad fishing up there. But June 1st is when that area opens up all the way to the Conowingo Dam. And that's similar to last year. Again, we're going to have either an 18 or 19-inch size limit. Like when I go to my daughter's soccer games, this is what people really want to know. They ask me, are we going to have an 18 or 19-inch limit? Right now, the answer is yes. It's going to be either 18
yes.
or 19, yes. And we're looking at basically May 16th to either December 10th or December 15th. So we're working on that end of the season is going to be, could be a little bit shorter there in December. And this is how we measure rockfish. We do not measure to the fork of the tail. We measure to the tip of the tail. And I worked as a striped bass biologist in the field, tagging and releasing striped bass for 6 or 7 years before I got involved in other work at DNR. But we just do a light squeeze, and you're measuring to the outer lobe of the top of the tail. I mean, if the size limit is 19 inches and you have a fish that's right on the line, I usually would release that fish and try to give yourself some cushion because they will shrink a little bit on ice and you could get yourself in trouble. I usually, if I'm going to keep a fish for dinner, I'll try like a 19 and a half or a 20 incher if I can, and I'll release the ones that are borderline. That's easier to do when fishing is good. When fishing is tough, a lot of times you're trying to kind of stretch them, but that just a heads up on that. All right, so that's the situation with regulations and how you can comment. What we're going to do now is I'll just go through a little run through on chumming and live lining regulations and the circle hook.
Real quick, I don't know if we touched on it. Is the commenting all through?
So the comment period, I'm going to wrap up at the end,
Okay.
sorry, with the comment period.
Okay.
That's going to be the last couple of slides. Okay. But the comment period is going to be through March 18th, and it's online. If you just Google Maryland DNR changes to regulations and look up striped bass. It's also, if you just go to our homepage, and I'm going to sort of wrap up with that. Before we get there, I just wanted to mention the circle hooks are still in effect. We will be this year. And it's either for chumming or live lining. So chumming is placing parts of fish or using frozen chum to attract fish. Any kind of feed or scent that you're putting in the water is considered chumming. In that case, you have to use a circle hook. Live lining is using a live fin fish. It includes live fish and eels, but it does not include shrimp, crabs, or worms. Okay, so a live fish or a live eel is considered live lining, and you have to use a circle hook. So basically, that'll be in effect from May 16th until December. I have a couple of examples of hooks up here. We prefer the larger ones, like a 7, 8, or 9. I really prefer 8 to 9, but I know that some folks will go a little bit smaller with the smaller bait. These are the little giveaway packs that we actually give out. This is an 8, which has a nice wide gap, and it's also a medium, thin, super sharp hook, so it penetrates real quick. We give out these little giveaway packs. I have some here today, just to educate people on circle hooks. Just whatever you do, don't go down to like a 3, 4, or 5. That's a really small circle hook. We're just trying to get people away from that. They're using a little 3/4, 3/0 to 5/0 circle hook in a spot, and what happens with those is they just get sucked down real deep, and it gets lodged down in the gills or even deeper, and it doesn't come out and hook fish in the corner of the mouth, and it kind of defeats the purpose of the circle hook. So just avoid using the super small circle hooks, and it has to be in line, which just means it lays flat on the table. Again, treble hooks at this point are not allowed at all for bait fishing or live lining. You can use a J hook with dead bait, bloodworms, grass shrimp, that sort of thing, as long as you're not chumming, or like if you're perch fishing, that kind of, or croaker fishing. We do have a website on that with a lot of information on circle hooks. Again, you can just Google Maryland DNR circle hooks. We've been pushing them for like about 3 years now, and a lot of the other states are starting to move in that direction. Okay, and then just to kind of wrap up again, like how to comment, I've been passing around the sign-up sheet where you can give us your email, which is really helpful, so we can communicate by email. This is our homepage. You can get on our email list there. We have information on trout stockings, which is really helpful this time of year. We have updates on rockfish regulations, tide tables, a lot of stuff, and snakeheads. We're constantly posting info on snakeheads and blue catfish. You can follow daily activity on the Angler's Log, and we're also starting our weekly online fishing report. We just put out a yellow perch sort of end of the winter report, and now we're going to start our weekly report, which has updates on the regulations. One thing that I really want to mention is we really would love to get more volunteer data from the field. We have a new mobile-friendly volunteer angler survey. Some of you guys have heard of iAngler. iAngler is good, but we're still kind of working on how to sort of, gather up all their data, and that has some logistics issues to it. So right now we prefer if you can use our in-house survey, especially for fish released. If you're a catch and release fisherman, we'd like to get a lot of info on catch and released fish. So we're going with these mobile-friendly surveys. We have the Click Before You Cast, which is a weekly forecast that's going to be a bay conditions and water quality forecast, which is going to be on the fishing report. And then we have Fish Maryland, which is our contest where you can get certificates. Okay. And I'm just going to bring it home now. So again, here we are for the regulations. The comment period ends at the end of the day on March 18th. So the day after St. Patrick's Day is easy. That's easy to remember. Is the last day to comment on the rockfish. You can do it many different ways. This is the public comment email, fisheries public comment.dnr@maryland.gov. You can send it in by snail mail to Maryland DNR headquarters in Annapolis, 580 Taylor Avenue. You can fax. I don't use fax machines anymore, but we still have that option.
I'm gonna fax it to them just to keep them on their toes.
Yeah, just
to make sure.
Just to annoy me.
Yeah,
go ahead and do that.
Like, it's coming through this.
So you can go ahead. You can fax in your comments, and also on our website, on our changes and regulations website, there is a new Google form where you can comment. Again, we're hoping to have all the summer and fall regs finalized in late April, hopefully. And the spring trophy season is online, and that starts May 1. That's set right now. And here's that changes and regulations website. This is what it looks like. The Google form is there. There's a blue thermometer. So this is the scoping period. We're in scoping right now for summer. Spring regs are down here. They're already set. They're effective. So it goes from scoping to development to comment period to final decision, and then they become effective. And we're on scoping right now. with the summer regulations until the day after St. Patrick's Day. That's your last day to get in your comments, and we encourage comments. I think we got 150 comments on the first night that it was open, which is probably a new record for us. Part of it was Lenny's article posting, but that's good. That was what we wanted to do. We wanted to get more people commenting, because there was a lot of concern that maybe during the last few striped bass hearings, attendance was maybe a little bit low, or people weren't really paying attention, or that sort of thing. Right. So now people are getting more engaged with commenting, and that's one of the reasons we came up with the Google form and everything.
Yeah. And commenting is probably a fancy word kind of for putting a vote in.
Just having a vote.
And unfortunately, 95% of anglers out there, probably a lot of people watching this, are not the people, in the inner circles doing this every day. And, we all know all the people in all the other industries are very well represented. So you definitely want to make your voice heard, just like with any type of voting, especially if you're a rec angler. Lenny?
So
go ahead.
Can I ask you to flip back to the option 2 slide real quick?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
For anybody who wants to make a comment, and I personally believe it is really your responsibility as a citizen to make your voice heard, and these comments do get read. It's important. But in this slide, I think everybody...
This is option 2.
Right. Everybody who might comment on this, I think there's a critical piece of information missing from this slide. And what I'm specifically referring to is, with options 2 and 3,
right?
You want to explain where I'm going with this, or
the pilot program for charter captains?
The fact that charter boats get to keep 2 fish per person per day.
Right.
So what they're doing is with option 1, everybody gets 1 fish a day. Charters, recreationals, everybody, no closure.
Correct.
With option 2, charter boats get 2 fish per day. Recreationals get 1, we get the closure. So I think it's important that everyone understands.
Yes. Yeah, that's a good point.
That probably belongs on that slide.
Yeah, right. So it probably does belong in the slide, but I wanted to present it the way that we have it on the on the website, and not like stray too far from that. But you're right, that is a good point. Also, the pilot program for charter captains, it allows them to keep 2 fish, but they have to do the mandatory new electronic reporting. So I'm not going to get into the technical details, but it's called fax, and you'll probably hear that word being thrown around. And actually, we're already doing it for red snapper in the Gulf. I think it's a good idea. We get better data from the charter boat and the party boat fleet with electronic reporting. There's a lot of success with that down in the Gulf. So with red snapper, for example, and it's being used in other areas now. So, but yeah, that if they participate in that program, they can keep 2 fish. They just can't keep that extra boat fish, but they can keep 2 fish per person, and that's part of the proposal for 2 and for 3. Yeah, that's correct.
That is a very important piece of the whole puzzle.
That's a really good point.
And I think everybody too watching and here too, make sure you educate yourselves. There's a lot of information. There's a lot of misinformation. Just because someone is X, Y, and Z person doesn't mean what they're saying is true or real, this and that. So you really do have to search out your answers, do your research. And figure out, because everybody's coming at it from a different angle. Everybody wants something a little different. Yeah. Everybody's willing to give something a little different.
Yeah,
so.
And option 3 is the same as 2, except you select your closure period, but it also has the pilot program. Again, if the charter captain signs up for the electronic reporting, he can keep 2 fish per person for his clients. So, and. I think that's pretty much all I have.
Yay!
And,
so
I have my.
We're not going to let you go, Eric. Though you know that, right?
Here's my email and phone number. Okay.
So we're not going to let Eric go. Though we're going to take like a little 5-minute break, and then we're going to have Lenny and LJ and Travis up here, and we're just going to basically kick off right where we left off. So we'll let you get a drink or something, and thank you guys all for coming, and we'll be back in a minute.
Don't go anywhere. There's more stuff.